and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between. Welcome back to Thirsty Work, the all-new, tantalizing sex education podcast. Tonight we're joined by the glorious BradWOTO, where we'll be talking about sex and drugs. It's Thirsty Work. Ladies and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between, it's Valen Vain from the editing room here. Just wanted to give you all a heads up that today's conversation does include references to sex, drugs, growing up in an abusive environment, and some references to suicide. Please look after your own mental health, look after your own spoons. If this isn't the episode for you, that's perfectly fine. Thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between. This is Thirsty Work, the brand new sex education podcast, Season 2, doing delightful, amazing things. And I've got an amazing guest with me here today, BradWOTO. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, Brad, was because you've been so very open about your history with drugs and what have you. So, without any further ado, BradWOTO, you glorious individual, thanks very much for sticking around through the first 20 minutes of us.
That's my time. Sorry.
That's it. I'm out. Done and dusted. And as I mentioned, you have been quite open with your past about, like, previously being an addict and what have you.
Mm.
Like, that is very, and credit to you for doing that. I know that a lot of people like to shy away from it, but you are...
I didn't talk about it for so long. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, no, I literally never spoke about anything, really. I was just, I don't know what it is, but I think it was being brought up by and surrounded by that sort of toxic masculinity energy where you aren't allowed to talk about your feelings and you shouldn't. Like, if I was to say anything about addiction or my struggles and things, then it's kind of weakness almost. So I never really, I just kind of had that drilled into me. Everyone in my family that's male is a mechanic or a builder, like a construction worker or something.
Okay.
And
real
so everyone's,
yeah,
like real macho energy. I've always been like the kind of the black sheep of the family, kind of just a little like different kind of. And yeah, I had a crazy childhood, weird, like the same abusive story you've ever heard. Over macho dad, very violent, that kind of, I don't really need to go into detail.
Yeah.
It's the same as any story you can ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my teens, I just became dependent on drugs because instead of processing my emotions and what I was going through and figuring out what was happening in my head or heart or whatever you want to think of it as, I just kind of discovered drugs and was like, oh, I can just medicate myself to feel okay and normal, kind of.
That's usually the story, to be fair.
Yeah. And so I just did that, and I didn't realize that it was incredibly harmful so much because I wasn't like, like completely out of my mind or anything. I was using drugs from like 15 till about 23, but like hard drugs pretty consistently, 19 to the end of my 23rd year.
So you started as early as 15. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I guess it depends what you count weed as well, because if we count weed, then I'm 14. So okay. I don't know. Because I do have like a weird thing with, I don't really do anything now. I drink maybe a beer. One beer a night is my max. I didn't drink for a long time as well, but I picked it up again recently because I was getting bored.
Yeah.
I also have a lot of self-control now. Like I know where I'm at and my limits and stuff really well. But yeah, drugs just became this thing for me where I think, I know now. I'm much, much older. I'm 36 now. I've been clean for 13 years.
That's well, congratulations, first and foremost.
Thanks very much. It's rough. It's really one of the hardest things I think I've ever been through. And I don't think I'm really over it either. Like there are times when I sit and think about it and I think, oh, I've processed that and I'm over it and it was so long ago and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there are days when I'm just like, I still feel, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go out and do some drugs. Or my immediate response to something maybe bad happening is, oh, I should get drugs to fix this and level myself out.
I think that's one of the constant things with addicts is they always say, like, you never stop being an addict. Like,
No, I 100% agree with that. Do you know how I know that that's true? Is that I'm still an addict in my dreams. I still take drugs. I still smoke. It's crazy.
wow.
Like yeah, I wake up and I'm like, dude, I was just doing coke in my dream and it was normal, you know?
Do you
So
still get the same sort of feeling of like the drug effect in your dreams, or is it just like
yeah, I don't
the
know
habitual
really.
nature of it?
Yeah, I think it's more like the habit. It's more just how I guess I think it must just be how my brain is wired. Because that was how I wired my brain as a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it doesn't feel like I'm like high or crazy or like I've just done some ecstasy or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do feel like a lot of almost all of my dreams. I will just casually still take a load of drugs, just anything, like whatever it is. It's really, really odd. And yeah, it is a daily um, thing. It's almost like this is probably like maybe too dramatic to say, but it does feel like every day the first thing I have to do is go manually, don't take drugs. Now get on with everything else, right? Like I have to first not be a drug addict, and then I can just get up and go
I
and
mean,
have a shower.
if that's the way it works, because especially with drugs being that escape, quite literally, of just even like a lot of people think that a lot of the drug addiction comes from like escaping of external factors, like you said, like your stereotypical abusive background, but the realistically speaking, the 9 times out of 10 it's escape from your own mind.
Yeah,
Like
100%. I think I've had I've had like a weird life, like
mm,
it's I've done a lot of things and I feel like I've lived a few different lives, like I've Doctor Who regenerated a lot. And I think a lot of people who get older, you feel every few years you go through some transformations and things. And I definitely feel like I've been through a few of them, but the journey has always had this through line of like mental health stuff going on. Where I was a kid, I didn't know at 14 that I was depressed, that I had anxiety, and I had these issues. I have OCD,
why would you?
and
Like it's your
yeah, I had
normal,
no
you know.
idea. Yeah, I just was like, this is what everyone feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think between 14 and 15, I I started to recognize that my friends were different. They were just like, they wouldn't react to things the way that I would. And that I would say just casual stuff like, oh, how about when you feel like you want to kill yourself? And they're like, yeah, hey, yeah, what? And it was so like, I was like, oh, you don't feel like that? Like, what? You don't need to medicate yourself to feel happy. You're just enjoying this right
Yeah.
now without booze, even. And it was weird. And I started to recognize that. And then but I guess the thing is that I didn't talk about it with anyone. I pretty much never spoke about it, didn't speak about it with my family. I have one friend who she had a sort of similar experience, and so we kind of spoke to each other a bit more about some more emotional things. But I also just didn't really have the ability to describe it. Like now I can speak about things because I'm old and I know how to have a conversation with someone. But if you speak to a 15-year-old now, you're like, oh, I thought I was an adult when I
Yeah.
think back at me being 15, looking at my 15-year-old eyes, having conversations. I thought I was like the big man. But now I'm like, man, I was a child, like
Oh,
so young.
I feel that.
I
I
was just
mean,
going out, scoring drugs and shit. It's crazy to think
I
about.
I never really got on the drugs, but I know what it's like to start early because I started like I was drinking from 10 and nightclubbing from 14. So that whole
Yeah.
bravado of being like, oh, I'm an adult, don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I fully get that.
Yeah, being able to get into the like local clubs at 15, like I mean, now I think they've clamped down a lot on like IDing people and stuff. But when
Definitely.
I first started going clubbing, there was none of it. Like, and I was like 6 foot tall at about 15, and so I could just get in. Like I probably looked young,
Mhm.
but now that I'm older, I see a 20-year-old, and I'm like, I don't know if that is a 14-year-old or a 20-year-old. I
Mhm.
can't tell. I don't spend any time around people that are that young,
Yeah.
so I imagine that like bouncers and stuff must have the same thing where they're like, yeah, this is just how kids look.
Oh, I've
Just
definitely
very
been
baby
like
faced.
on a night out and asked a potential lover for an ID just because I was like, I need to know. I can't
Yeah.
guarantee that
Yeah.
you know.
But I definitely had, for some reason, I had a lot more opportunity to go out and get drunk. Once you're in a club, you can find drugs really easily,
Yeah.
as well. Um, and this, for me, was South London. I would go along the coast, along like North Kent, because you could get into clubs in like Dartford and Gravesend, and I'd go
Yeah.
all the way out to like there was like a cool rock club that I would go to that was in like somewhere, I think it's called Strood. I don't know, anyone from the
Okay.
UK is going to recognize some of these places, Rochester kind of area. But I was going because I just wanted drugs more and more eventually, and I just needed to get drunk. It
Did
was
you
great.
get
It was so amazing.
did you go that far out specifically to like avoid the local area and stay out of local trouble, or
I just went
just
wherever I
went?
went. Yeah, I was off the rails, dude. Like the version of me that you've come to know
Yeah.
over the last however long, who plays D&D. I live at home with my dog, and I'm so different to
Yeah.
this. I was insane, dude. Like I didn't have glasses on. I had like a little French crop with hair. You know, I like just wore whatever everyone was wearing, t-shirt and jeans, and kind of what made sense.
Mm.
I was very much like trying to, it was performative almost, like I was just presenting what I thought everyone wanted around me. But really, my singular motivation was just to get absolutely fucked up. And the more time that went on, the more money I was getting, and I was getting older. By the time I hit sort of 20, I'd moved out. My mum basically kicked me out. It was bored. It was one of those like, you're fired, no, I quit situations at home.
Yeah.
I was an absolute handful. She'd just been through a load of shit with my dad. They'd broken up. Me and my dad went no contact, and he was crazy, and it was just an insane time. My mum, when I think about it now, she was like my age now. She was like dealing with these two kids and like this whole chaos that was going on. And then you had me. I was off the rails, just going absolutely insane, but also completely masking any of it from her. Like she had no real idea. I don't think she knew. Kind of hard to tell with parents because when you're younger,
Yeah.
you think you're sleuth as fuck. But I'm
It's
like, I don't
true.
know, maybe she could tell. Like, I must have come home stinking of at least weed, like, or like I was obviously drunk. I was
Yeah.
hungover and stuff. But I don't know if she knew that I was using it as like a coping mechanism. Many years later, me and my mum had an argument in which eventually all of this came out.
Yeah.
And since then, we've gotten on a lot better because she understands my mental health, which makes me think she didn't know when I was a kid that I
Yeah.
was freaking out, and I didn't really know either. So when I moved out at 20 and I had my own place, I moved in with a guy that I knew, kind of just a friend of a friend, and me and him basically owned a crack den for 3 years. Is essentially what it was.
Jesus.
We just had an apartment just kind of outside of London. Like when I say outside of London, like Zone 6, if that
Okay.
means
Yeah.
anything, I don't know. And the door was open. You could come if you had drugs, if you had booze, anything really, you could come in, and just a revolving door of strangers all the time. I don't know if you've seen Breaking Bad, but I liken it to in that show.
Mhm.
There's a character called Jesse Pinkman who gets this kind of like, he gets a bit of money, buys a sound system, and then everyone is in his house. It's almost like a constant party, but they're all kind of laying around and all fucked up all the time. It was like that. But also, I was working a normal job, so I wasn't quite like movie. It wasn't like this big. You see like drug addicts in movies, and you're like expecting them to be like almost cool and just like. Right. I was just working a normal job in a reprographics firm, fucked up all day, got home, did drugs until maybe 3, 4 a.m. Tried to come down, couldn't. Would sleep for like 2 hours, get up, Red Bull, go to work to get home to take drugs. The amount of money I was making was like enough to just cover rent. So I was still kind of just, people would come in with drugs. And everyone had drugs, and it was everything pretty much. The only thing I didn't really get into was heroin. I smoked heroin but I didn't ever inject because I have a fucking huge phobia of needles. I think it's the only reason. Like
Bloody
that was
hell.
the only thing. But I had friends who were heroin addicts, but we didn't see too many of them. When and if you recall, 2005-ish time.
Okay, yeah.
Heroin was out, and it was just before ketamine came in.
Yeah.
Ket became the big thing a couple of years, like around the year I got clean. So there was a lot of like MDMA and coke was like pills and powders were like predominantly the things that people would just hand me anything. I don't even know what I was taking most of the time.
Did
I
you
was just
care?
taking it. No, I didn't give a shit. A couple of times I completely lost my mind on certain drugs. I found out that I'm particularly susceptible to a benzo alcohol mix. So something like a Valium, and I had one Valium and a can of Foster's one night, and I don't remember the entire evening, just complete blackout. And I mean, most of those 3 years is kind of patchy in my memories. It's kind of weird. It's like thinking almost in your own memory, you have those like redacted lines.
Yeah.
I have that throughout a 3-year period of just huge chunks of time.
And
I don't
do
remember
they
anything.
sort of come back over time? Like
No, pretty
gone.
much. I don't. Yeah, I have no idea because I just don't think I don't know. I guess my brain wasn't recording or something. Or like sometimes I know a lot of other people who are alcoholics or maybe even just smoke weed or something. Some people kind of feel like they have like two personalities eventually, and you only remember the stuff you have when you were drunk or fucked up or whatever. You can remember what you were like last night when you were drunk and fucked up, but when you are sober, you can only remember being sober. It kind of got to being a bit like that for me, but I spent almost no time sober. It was
just the other personality just really taking over of all of it.
And I was completely gone. Like, and I wasn't eating. I didn't eat anything really for 3 years. I didn't look after, I wasn't in a gym or anything like that. By the time I moved out, really, I should have provided you with some photos, but I don't know how to find them. But I have a couple of photos that I could probably dig up and show you one day of just how emaciated I looked, because I'm quite skinny.
Yeah.
But I was bones. My hair was super long and didn't do anything. By the time I moved out and by the time I got clean, I was just completely, it's just a different person. It just overtook my entire life.
What was it that, because I'm aware, I've not been an addict myself, but I've got lots of friends that have been, and I know that they usually have to hit rock bottom before they're prepared to change. So what was it that helped you change to choose sobriety?
Yeah, I think they call it a eureka moment or something like that, where you hit this. And for me, it was a rock bottom. I was at home in that crack den, but it was actually empty for once. There were rare times that I would be alone there. And there was no one in this house. And I was laying in this front room. The place was just a state. Just imagine. You can only imagine what it would look like. There were two TVs,
a few,
PlayStation
to be fair,
2.
so I'm aware.
Yeah, it's just tins and ashtrays and ash, and the sofas are wrecked, and everything was just horrific. And I was laying there very I wasn't sort of, I guess I wasn't depressed, but I was depressed, but it wasn't what did it. I don't know how to describe the state I was in, actually, now that I think about it, but we'll just say depressed. I was feeling extremely low, extremely. I've had several run-ins, constant run-ins with suicidal ideations, and a couple of run-ins with straight up suicide. And I was having one of those days where I was just done, or like, this is so maybe too much, I don't know, but I get to points in my life where I get very tired of bothering staying alive. I just can't be bothered anymore. It's not even like I feel emotional necessarily. It's just a tiredness, and almost like, oh well, I'm done reading this book, I'll put it away. But I'm like feeling like that about my entire life. So I was laying in this apartment And I was feeling like that, and it was making me, when you get into that state, if you feel kind of maybe a little suicidal, or maybe you have some suicidal ideations, or maybe you're really on the edge, it becomes extremely scary. It's easily one of the most frightening thoughts ever, because it goes against like your instincts. And whenever you go against like those animal instincts, it changes you. It completely feels like you rewrite your DNA almost, because you're overriding something that you should be doing. And I was laying there, and I knew that I was going to die, is what it was. I knew that if I kept on this path, I was going to die. It wasn't going to be that week. It was going to be probably years later on, and eventually this lifestyle was going to kill me. And I had a very clear moment, and this is not redacted. I remember it so clearly, of just laying there looking up at this ceiling and thinking, do I want to die? Really? Like really honestly asking myself, is this something that I want? And I knew, and this survival instinct happened in me that came back and said, no, why? You don't want to die. We don't want to die. But if we keep doing this, we're going to. It's going to. I was running out of money. We had no money. It was all going wrong. I couldn't afford anything. I couldn't afford like food, like a lunch or anything like that. And I was just starving all the time. Couldn't afford cigarettes. As a smoker, that starts to fuck you up as well. You start doing crazy things for cigarettes. And I just hit this like end of this tether where I went, I can't do this anymore. And so I got up and I'd left that house, and I packed a bag. It's made me drink so bad. And I left the house, and let me grab my dog.
That's all right. That's all right. That's the dog Merlin, for those people that don't know. Brad's got a little hound Merlin who goes furious for everyone around.
It's furious when I tell the truth. Yeah, so I had this moment that led me to just get up and leave. And I wonder if you would like a treat. See, what I have here is dog drugs. Yeah, so I got up in that moment. I just stood up and I went into another room and I packed a bag. I left and I went to my mum's house. And this is kind of the weird side of this, is that it was easily, I think, the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was so unbelievably difficult. This is why I say I'm not really over it, because I think it was extremely traumatic as well. The thing with the lifestyle is you have to lose all of your friends. It feels like dying, is what it feels like, because some of my friends understood that they were still in, so it's very hard to spend time with them. And some of them don't understand, and they think you're a dick because you just got up and left. I just left this apartment, and there was rent that the other guy that was living there was like, what do we do about this, you know?
Yeah.
And I quit my job because I couldn't keep going to this job, because it's all addiction is, a lot of it is like the routine. Like I would get to a certain part of my day, and that would be when I would like sneak off and just do a little bump of something, or you know, just to get me through the end of the day.
Through the end of the day, yeah.
And I was just unable to do that. I couldn't even get through a day at my normal job, because it was all attached to this like habit. And I had to break just this whole habit. I lost all of my friends. And the thing is, for everyone else, I just went like that. It's like, now when I look back, I went, whoa, and I pulled a cord, and I saved my life, is what I did. But I didn't realize that was what I was doing at the time. just felt like I'd just gone scorched earth, and everyone didn't understand. Half of my friends hated me. Half of them I couldn't really be friends with anymore. My mum just did not know what was going on. I just showed up at my mum's house with a bag and was like, hey, I'm moving back in. I quit my job. And she was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Did she
Like, why
know
are you
that you
just...
were an addict?
No, she knew
Oh.
nothing of this life.
Yeah, in which case
so
that's quite the
quite
the thing, yeah.
I was just like, I don't want to work anymore, and I don't want to pay rent, so I'm just going to be a 23-year-old. I'm going to live on your couch. So I just moved back home with my mum, and she hated me for it. She was like, "Get up, go to work, go and get outside, find a job." You know, like your mum does when you're 15, kind of.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm now having withdrawals, but pretending I'm not, and I'm like freaking out. Everyone hates you. I feel insane. I haven't got a job. I have no money. My body is going absolutely just every which way. Like 1 minute I'm throwing up, the next minute I'm shaking and freaking out, and I'm having all these like weird feelings and thoughts that just your synapses are going absolutely loopy. You're in need of something, so you're like insanely hungry. Then you're like, oh, I need to smoke something, and then you're like, I need food, and then you need water, and then you don't want anything because you want to... It's the weirdest thing to go through physically, but I don't think that was even that bad compared to the weird sort of social element of just having to like hit a reset on your life.
Yeah. I live with, I said before, and he's quite open about it, but I live with a recovering alcoholic at the moment, and one of the things that he's really struggling with is just how available alcohol is. And like every social situation. Yeah, it is the cure.
That's the thing that's weird, is that you're able to fix the worst feeling ever physically. And also you like you're fighting yourself, so your brain is screaming at you to go and get stuff, and you go no for as long as you can, and then eventually you don't have any control over that part of your brain because you're just debilitated down to the point. It's like me saying, hey Valen, just hold your breath forever. You can't do it. Like eventually, as long as you're not passed out or if someone's holding your mouth or something, you will eventually just go, because you just can't stop it. And it feels like that. And you have to fight that for like the first few weeks were absolutely like, I think it was probably some of the worst feelings I've ever had physically. And then you have the first months, which are just a lot of
trick your own brain, don't you, into finding reasons why you should go back to whatever it is. Like having that little moment where
it's all just like, excuses that you come up with it. I was smoking as well, and I was still smoking. I carried on smoking weed and cigarettes, and I was still drinking during this. So I quit all of the hard drugs. So if anything that was like class A, class B at the time that I was taking, which was just about everything that I could get my hands on, pills, acid, coke, whatever, didn't matter. That's what I had to quit. But I didn't go completely cold turkey on all the other little things, because booze is, I think, worse than weed, if I'm honest. I think
it is. There was a study done in America where a professor actually lost his job because he recategorized all of the drugs based on, I think it was the three things were the lethality, their addictive qualities, and readily availableness or something like that. And like alcohol was a class A drug because it's just
absolutely believe that
easy to fuck you up. And weed was still very low on the thingy because it in itself isn't particularly addictive. It's like the nicotine you get with the spliff, etc. That's the addictive part of it, and it has many medical properties.
Yeah, and if you're in a position like I was in as a kid, where you're just freaking out all the time, but you don't even maybe know it, and emotionally just kind of confused, this being in a state of just smoking some weed and being high and just calming down, or even just being nothing, it can reduce you to just laying in a sofa. You feel like you're deflated sometimes on a sofa, and you're like a paper man that's like almost part of the sofa. Like that feeling, just being fully stoned, it was great for me because I couldn't be alone with my thoughts, like you said earlier on before we
Yeah.
were on the call. I can't. Well, I say I can do it now, but I couldn't at the time. I couldn't handle just being me. I didn't understand how anyone could stand being in their own skin without something helping you to just cope. Um, for the longest time, for years after I even quit drugs, I still struggled with it.
Well, especially, I
I
mean, you said you had a background of like old fashioned toxic masculinity, but within those old style, especially more traditional values, appearances, is that whole view of we don't have mental health problems in our family.
right,
No child of mine is going to have mental health problems or what have you. So everything just gets
they
like
don't even exist.
ignored, swept under the carpet.
Yeah,
Like I know that a lot of people in this day and age are getting like ADHD assessments because they didn't realize back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s that ADHD was a spectrum, and therefore they were just it's a wild they're a wild child. They're a wild
yeah,
child.
it's
So
feral.
and it's just like okay, mental health is much bigger than that, and it's good that things are getting better, but
Right. I mean, we didn't have the internet and stuff. Um, I didn't. I had a computer. I had some internet access when I was in my mid to late teens, but it was like that early doors.
dial
Like
up.
people would just dial up downloading like limpbiscuit.exe and just
Yeah,
fucking up the whole computer, and then I'd maybe get online and be on like ICQ and MSN and things,
yeah.
talking to people, but we didn't have access the way we do now to just information. Um, and no one, I just didn't, I didn't know a single person who I could talk to about any of it. Not one. I couldn't name a single. I'm sure that there were plenty of people that I maybe could have spoken to, but I didn't recognize it. Everyone else was either walling up themselves or whatever. But in my life as a kid, my entire family were just not the people I felt comfortable speaking to. And all of my friends were just pretty normal, pretty neurotypical, pretty,
Mm.
just fine. Um, Everyone always has more going on behind closed doors than you realize. But in terms of presenting it, I'm pretty insight. I can usually read people very well, and I can usually figure out someone. I can usually connect. I'll be like, oh, you
Yeah.
might have a thing, and I can kind of recognize. Quite often, I've been in a room with random strangers, and I've been like, "You're a drug addict," and I can tell.
Mhm.
And like, something has developed in me over the years, and I know as a kid I didn't have access to that, so I didn't have anybody that I could speak to as a guide. I didn't have anybody that I could look to maybe just be like, what is going on in my head?
Mm.
And there was no resources available. I mean, there probably was, but I didn't even know that I was fucked up enough to go.
They weren't
Um,
easily available. You would have to know who to speak to, or somebody would have to have given you the phone number to talk about it,
yeah.
Or
Um, I ended up being marched into a therapist's office when I was 19. And it doesn't sound like I did therapy at 19 through to my 20th year. But if you have a manic episode on the NHS, they
Mm.
actually give you a therapist immediately. Now, that's the shortcut. Don't do it. But like it's
Yeah.
really hard to get therapy on the NHS.
I
It's
think
really
the
hard to get like you.
current waiting period is 3 years. As of the time of this recording, it's about 3 years to
Yeah,
get anything
it
on
was
the NHS.
it was almost impossible. It was like a year to get a counselor, not a therapist, just someone who sits in a room with
Mhm.
you and isn't qualified to do like CBT therapy, even
Yeah, yeah.
just whatever. Now, if you have a manic episode, which can be a bunch of different things, but an example is a suicide attempt,
Yeah.
they will throw you straight in the next day. They pump your stomach and they walk you straight into a therapist the next day, and you immediately get help. I had that at 19, and I had somebody that taught me a lot of. It's the first time I ever spoke to somebody who said, right, this is what's going on with you. And this is why you are reliant on drugs and alcohol and why you feel that way and why you're doing all this other stuff. And I was very OCD. Weirdly enough, I have a lot of depression and I was misdiagnosed with dysemic disorder, which is like a general low mood thing.
All right. Okay.
Turns out now I think I'm bipolar. I can't remember what they, I don't know. My last therapist went, I'm not going to diagnose you because you're going to go home and obsess over it and start living within the parameters of what it says on the internet. And I don't think that's good for you. And I was like, fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like, I can if you want me to, but I think it's a great idea that I don't actually give you your diagnosis here.
Because you'll hyper focus on the research and want to know exactly what's what.
And I'll obsess over it. Obsessive compulsive disorder. I just start to, So yeah, but from what I've gleaned, it is some variant of bipolar and also general anxiety disorder and OCD. And the weirdest thing about going into this therapist is I'm thinking, oh, he's going to be like bang on the depression stuff. He's going to be like, we got to check the sadness as quickly as possible because that's what's going to fuck him up. But actually, he was on the OCD because OCD is my worst thing. And I didn't realize it at the time. The worry and the obsession and the intrusive thoughts and the need to control my surroundings and to control my mood and everything like that was just manifesting in these like wild ways. And I've never had the OCD is really easy to understand when someone has to like turn a light switch off 12 times before they leave a room or whatever. I don't really have many of those. I have certain things that I won't go into because we'll be here all night.
It's all right. But it's also massively misrepresented as well. There's so many people that just slang it off to, oh, I'm so OCD about this. And it's like, you don't
I have
understand.
to arrange all my pens.
Yeah.
You're like, no, dude, I can't stop thinking about the fact that I'm going to accidentally cut myself with that pencil, or whatever. And I'm just like, it's in my head and my brain is telling me that I've cut myself with the pencil and it keeps showing me it and my body reacts and I think I'm actually injured. It's fucking weird. And you can obsess over things like that. I have spoken about it on my stream at greater length, but I don't want to. It is a confusing one to understand. But the thing that was strange, I guess, and the point I was originally making here was that it was the first time I had ever had someone explain any of this to me. And I was 19. I was already too deep in. I was too busted up and broken. And I don't really use those terms, but anymore. But that's how I felt. And he did a lot to curb some of the extremes, I think, for me. And then taught me a lot of things, gave me a lot of tools to go away and figure out what I'm doing. But like that's what it took to get information in that at that period, like all those years ago, before the internet. You just couldn't. There was no, unless you stumbled into someone else. And a lot of my friends were casual drug users, healthily, I guess. That if you are just fine mentally, I honestly think you're good taking just about any drug. Probably not like heroin or anything that's like insanely one dose.
One dose addictions.
You're done.
It's that dynamic of everything in moderation. Like drugs have all been invented across the years of medical practices. I mean, cocaine was once an ingredient for a variety of different nondescript things. Like there was so much of it, and it's just the way that it's been refined over the years. I mean, I used to work in a pharmaceutical company, and when I did my some training for one of the jobs I was doing, they were saying that it in America, in the States at the moment, or as of the point where I was doing my training, 80% of addiction is prescription drugs. It's all stuff that's been prescribed to people. And it's just like, wow, that's pretty well.
It's also, I think, because they don't treat the mental health issue.
No, they just
give you medicine to make you feel better. And that is, I guess, what I mean when I say if you just kind of feel fine and you don't have a lot of mental health issues going on, you could probably take acid. You could easily take ecstasy. I recommend MDMA. Try it. It's fun.
For the purposes of terms of service, we are not recommending anybody do any kind of illegal drug.
All views of my own are not Valen Vain's. I forgot I was not on my own channel. But like, I'm kind of, and I'm joking a little, but it's just that the point is that if you are relying on it as a crutch, you become reliant upon it as a crutch. And instead of processing, what I needed to do was process all of the things that happened to me as a kid and all the things I saw and it's just, and all the weird upbringing, emotional, abusive things that was happening in my family. I didn't process any of it. I just went, well, I guess that feels weird. Hey, what does this do? It makes me feel better. Cool. And it's like my brain didn't even develop like the understanding that I can process emotions. I just became
I
completely
suppose
void of them almost.
there's also probably an element in there, and again, I'm not a therapist or anything like that, but there's probably like an element in there of like, especially if you had OCD from quite a young age and stuff, of the idea, the obsession of control, knowing you can't control a situation, especially a bad situation, and going, what I can control is this escape from the situation.
Yeah, it's just pure escapism. It's pure cope. This is the part of my brain that should be going, okay, this was uncomfortable and I feel bad. Okay, I understand that feeling, and it goes out the other side, and you process emotions coming in, you feel them, you understand what is happening. It doesn't change how it feels, but it's just still there. Maybe it's sadness. You come in, you feel sad, it goes away. I was just going, I don't like that. Quick, get rid of it with this. And I would just smoke something or take a drug or rub something into my gums. And if you're a kid, you're screwed, because it is that's how you learn to cope with everything. And like you said at the beginning, I still feel like it now. I've had a shit week this week. Not really a shit week. I probably shouldn't say a shit week, but it has just been an emotional week for me. And it is so strange to still feel like I want to go and buy drugs. Just so
like
quickly.
13 years on.
My brain will go, we can fix this with drugs. And I go, dude, shut the fuck up. What are you like? Who are you? I haven't seen you for years.
Where that whole thing of you're always an addict. You might be sober, but you're always an addict. And that's the part of your brain that just goes, do you remember this really good time that we had? Well, that was because of these chemicals.
We can just get rid of it. Do you want the cure? I've got the cure for this thing. And it isn't. Like anyone who's maybe had I had such massive drug tolerance by the end of it that they weren't even doing anything. I just needed them to stave off feeling like shit physically a lot of the time. It was like, if I didn't take Coke was probably my main thing. Like I wouldn't be able to quantify how much I took, how much I spent. I was in debt at the end of this as well, which is rough. But I was on so much of it that if I didn't take any in like a 24-hour period, I couldn't function. I was like barely able to move almost. It's crazy how dependent your body can become on it. And you take it and it doesn't even have the same effect. It was barely even waking me up. And I was like, dude, this is crazy.
The tolerance is wild. I mean, it happens with a lot of those where like the super bugs and stuff come from, is because everything grows a tolerance eventually. I realize we've been talking a whole load about like drugs and bits and pieces.
I've wasted the entire thing on this.
Not a waste
what you wanted me to talk about.
Not a waste at all. But I did want to know like how it affected, because with this being a sex education podcast, how did like the drugs affect like your intimate relationships, and was it a replacement for coital engagement, or better with, or was it what was the dynamic in regards to like your relationship with drugs and your relationship with either relationships, sex, etc.?
There's a couple of elements to it. On just the straight up just having sex, just banging. For me, there was it was kind of like a crapshoot. It depended on how many drugs I took. And later on, a lot of people ask me like, what's it like to just like, I don't know, just do cocaine and then have sex? And I don't really know, because I never just did cocaine. I'd be on a cocktail of different things. I'd be drunk. So there was no like scientific measurement or anything like that.
I mean, I'd like to think that nobody went into sex with just an experiment on their mind, you know, like they've got alternate reasons.
And for a good chunk of the period I was doing a lot of drugs and I was living in that crack den, I was in a relationship with a really wonderful girl. She was the same age as me. Remember, she was a year younger than me. So she would have been like 20. I'd have been maybe 21, something like that. And I destroyed that fucking relationship. And it is one of those things that eats me up all the time about how I just feel bad about that.
Yeah.
But in terms, like, when you're out of a relationship and you're having like one night stands and stuff, sex is immediately different than when you're in a relationship.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
all of the things that come with those two things. So there's two elements. In general, I preferred having sex on drugs because, but I think what it was, now that I'm older, is that it lowered my inhibitions and allowed me to be more engaged and feel it more. I now know that I'm much older, that I'm possibly just demisexual. I like to be, I like to really know the person and I like to connect with them.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I just thought I wanted to fucking splooge.
Well, I mean, that's what we get taught, like, especially as young men. Like, it's that dynamic of the education we get is so shite that all we get really taught is the biology. I don't know what your sex ed was like, but like in regards to none. Yeah,
I was started having sex.
The schools are all just about like, here's the biology, or they certainly were at the time. And then as like society looks at us and it's just like, yeah, you need to sleep with as many people as possible. That's your job as a person. You're not meant to worry about emotions. You're not worrying about, it's just like, what about, you know, actual tenderness and appreciation and learning each other's bodies and the dynamics of pleasure. And they're like, well, you're a man, so ejaculation is all your
just
pleasure.
Need to fuck things. Just fuck the hot person. I'm speaking with hindsight now, but I do recall being younger and questioning that and being like, man, I really am not as, I never feel quite as engaged in like a one night stand. I'm not even like that bothered. Honestly, there would be times where I'd give up. I'd just be like, I give up. I can't finish. And I was kind of like getting soft and just being like, I don't really, and I just assumed it was drugs all the time. And now I wonder whether I just didn't feel connected. And I was like, fuck this.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite possibly. I mean,
I hate one night stands. I hate them. I've never enjoyed them. And I've always thought I was fucked up. And now I'm like, it's probably because I need connection with people. Like, I can find people attractive and I can flirt, and I flirt all the time. And I will definitely see people that I find attractive and I will comment on it. But if they literally were like, let's go and have sex right now, I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know. What books you into first? I don't know. Like, it's strange to think back on now. But with drugs itself, they will fuck you up. Like, you will, if you were like just really high on maybe like coke and stuff, you will struggle to come, is what it is. And you get so exhausted, you feel like completely dehydrated, and you're like, and you're like, I am exhausted. This has been going on for how long? And you're just trying to, it's like blue balling yourself, kind of. And there's a lot of drugs that will do that to you. I found that a lot of drugs, and this I think isn't just me, and I'm my junk. I think that this is a thing because I've spoken to a lot of my friends at the time. We were like, what the fuck? And MDMA and ecstasy drugs are designed that you'll feel, everything feels amazing. You can lay on the carpet and be like, oh, this is lovely. I think there's a Family Guy bit about that where he does that, and I was like, yes.
It was always described to me as like, I've not taken drugs. I don't judge people for doing it, but I don't take them myself. But it was always described to me as love and fluff. It was just like, oh, we're just gonna have some love and fluff, and it was like, all right, okay.
It's kind of nice, which is why I jokingly said like I recommend it so long as you don't become dependent on things like that. It makes your brain turn off the next day, like really weird. It's really weird. It's like you have an IQ or an intelligence stat, like a D&D character sheet.
Oh, right,
and your intelligence might be at a 10, which is like an average, but the next day it's a 4.
It
really, like, really, like, and so, I was on so much of it at times. I remember one time that girl that I said it ruined the relationship with said to me, please don't take that many drugs tonight, or don't do any drugs if my friends offer you drugs. I was hanging out with her friends. And immediately her friend came over and said, do you want some MDMA? I took some MDMA, and we did a load of it. And then the next day she asked me to go and get like a plate or a fork or a knife or something from the kitchen. And I went out there to get this fork, and I opened the drawer, and I didn't know which one was a fork. Think about how crazy that is. Like,
right. Okay. That's a fucking penny drop moment for me. Wow. Okay.
And I just was really struggling to identify which thing in here was a fork. And like a couple of years later, I was like, oh, I need to get my brain checked or something. Like, am I what was it? A tumor or something? But yeah, it was just that it's almost like you borrow tomorrow's energy, and your brain just explodes with love. Everything is awesome. Absolutely everything is. You play a song that you vaguely like, it's the best song you've ever heard. That's how it feels. But the next day you are really dumb. And I think because I was doing so many of them at this point, that knock-on effect was becoming huge. And I just remember we had a huge argument that day because I was like, what did you want? And she was like, a fork. Bring me a fork, And I was like, oh yeah. And I brought like everything. I just grabbed one of everything. I was like, which one? And she was like, what is wrong with you? What's happening here? Did you? And then we had an argument because she realized that I had been on drugs the night before, and she was like trying to.
I mean, drugs, alcohol, the addiction in general has destroyed many, many friendships, relationships, all kinds of things, because it's that. Well, part of it's down to the fact that it's one person's perspective versus an addict's perspective, and usually there's a lack of understanding of why can't you put the drugs down for me? And it's like, you don't understand, like the emotional bond I have for you is very much part of my soul. The chemical bond I have for drugs is like tethering me to it like a ball and chain. Like,
I need food, or it was just the same thing. You have food, you need to drink water, you need to take in oxygen. And I needed drugs.
This was going to kill me if you didn't change, and you did eventually. What? Oh no.
Yeah. No, go on. That was it.
What was it like after, like, because obviously you say you hit like 23, you had that moment, the epiphany moment, the where you were just like, right, okay, I need to sort this shit out. Went through your withdrawal and stuff, but like, what was the first intimacy moment like with sobriety? Because I mean, you said you've been hitting the drugs of some description since 14 to 23. That's 9 years of drug taking that got excessively worse. And then you got sober. What was that moment like where you were just like, do you know what? I'm now sober. I want to get a relationship, whatever the scenario.
I had a year where I did very little. I worked in Halfords installing car radios. I went from a pretty decent London job, mid-level reprographics. I was doing junior artworking on the fucking Olympics when we had the Olympics in this country. And I built myself up to a point in a company that I was using Adobe Illustrator to just draw lines on a fucking blueprint. Really kind of a boring job. Junior art worker sounds really cool, but actually is really boring.
Classic.
But I had kind of somehow just made my way up in this company just from being there for so many years. And that was the job that I ended up quitting. And then I was installing car radios in Halfords, just sitting there in a fucking Nissan Micra, pulling those things out, plugging them in, lying to anyone around me about how long it's a 10-minute job. And I'd be like, yeah, it's probably about 20, 25 minutes. So I could just sit in the car for longer and not do work. Didn't bother trying. It wasn't like a career move or anything. I just needed to basically keep my mom off my back because she thought I was throwing my life away, which it looked like. And also just a little bit of money. So I had money coming in. I had extreme debt. I was buying Coke by taking money out of an ATM on a credit card by the end of that last year, which is the most terrifyingly awful thing you can do. So I spent that year, I was still smoking weed and I was still kind of drinking and going out, but it was more like a local pub we might go and sit in and chat. And I had a couple of friends and we would just play PlayStation, like Rock Band era. Just like whatever was coming out. And we'd play PlayStation 3 games, I think was around that era. And a particular friend of mine was into the gym and he convinced me to start going to the gym. And he had a home gym and he had a local gym that was really cheap. Literally, I think it was about £5 a month to go to this gym. It was way out in the sticks. And
£5
so
a month
me
is
and
particularly cheap. For
it
anybody
was
who's
crazy,
listening
yeah.
in another country or what have you,
Really, like
£5
it's
a gym is
insanely
ridiculously
cheap.
cheap.
Yeah, at the time, I think the other gyms were like £30 a month minimum. And so he managed to convince me to just to go to the gym with him, and so I actually got really healthy. I had already done before I moved out. I did a little bit of boxing and kickboxing, and I had been into the gym casually with friends before, and I was quite healthy. And then I was really unhealthy, and then I was extremely healthy. And this year, I spent it doing nothing. I sat at my friend's house and maybe smoked a little weed and played PlayStation games. I would go to the gym. I was cycling, and we would go to like pubs and stuff. And then one night, I slept with my friend's sister. and then I woke up and I went downstairs, and my friend was in the kitchen, and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And I went, "Oh, I'm in love with your sister. I always have been." And I lied because I was just it was like he's gonna freak out. And then he
Okay.
was like, "Oh, okay, great." And then I was in a relationship with his sister for a year, and it was weird,
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
feel really bad about it, but
Yeah.
also she was great. Like
Yeah.
she just wasn't like the girl of my dreams,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like I was head over heels in love with her, but I did like her a lot, and we were in a relationship for about a year, but it was a little unbalanced. Because I was getting my life back together. I was still fucked up. I was mentally fucked up. It sounds like I was on this health kick and I had everything together. But at the time I was still free falling, but just in this sort of like energy saver mode,
Yeah. Yeah.
just trying to kind of get my shit together. And so I ended up in a relationship with my friend's sister, who we're friends now, although we haven't really spoken too much. And she was great. And so then sober sex after being on drugs all the time, sex is, depending on the drugs, you could be on like acid and you're not even, it's like you're not part of your own body. You're just two
Yeah.
spirits that are floating through the fucking cosmos if you're on the right cocktail of drugs. Or it's just you banging away, hoping you'll come so that you can end it because you just feel horrible because you can't finish and
Mhm.
stuff. It honestly, for me, it was just a flip of the coin for that most nights when I was on drugs.
Was there still
In
the
this
craving?
relationship,
Just before we go on to that, the next bit, was there still the craving when you were drugged up? Did you still have the lust? Or I suppose with you being demisexual, perhaps not. It was more of a like
yeah, it's.
situationship.
I wish I had a very clear cut answer and like a yes or no answer for you, but I'm not really sure.
Mm.
Don't know. And also we're dealing with like recovered JPEGs from
Oh yeah, that's
this
a good
like
point. Yeah, yeah.
broken hard drive of years in my
Somewhere under
mind.
that
So
redacted
yeah,
memory
like so
is the information we require.
it's hard to have any real, sometimes I don't know what I'm confabulating and just
Mhm.
inventing, and filling the blanks with, because it's kind of hard to remember stuff. But from what I understand, I was still, yeah, I mean, when you're a teenager, I feel like you have a lot more like hormones going around, and you become like you just start as soon as you discover masturbation, you don't stop for fucking years. Um, and I had that period, and so I still had a lot more of I guess, a sex drive. It's not like I don't have one now or
Yeah.
anything, but it's just I was more interested in having sex when I was a little younger than maybe I am right now.
Well, a lot of it when
Um,
we're young is I mean, so like there's no real thing as a sex drive. There's like sexual accelerators and sexual breaks. But a lot of the sexual accelerators, especially in like teenage years, comes from the fact that it's all new. It's like
yeah,
this fascinating new world that was taboo for you. You weren't allowed to know about it at such a
right.
young age. So it's yeah.
The other thing that I wonder as well with myself being younger is that the little like serotonin, oxytocin
Hmm.
bump you get from an orgasm would be a high for me that I would
Oh yeah, yeah,
chase.
yeah.
So I think I had some of that going as well when I was kind of really on the drugs. And I found that after that I wasn't as bothered. But the girl
Mhm.
that I was in this relationship with, Again, I was interested in her in every way, but I struggled to say whether. I don't think I was like in love with her, and I don't think I ever saw like a really long future with her or anything. It was, and this is like, it sounds like I've thought that at the time, but I didn't really think that at the time.
Yeah.
I just know it now.
Yeah.
At the time I was like, yeah, we're fucking, that's it. That's great. And then the next thing is happening. And then I'm watching a TV show. I was very kind of out of it, a little spaced out. I think I was trauma, shell shocked,
Yeah.
kind of just that, like a little recovering from the death of my previous life. And just kind of floating through this year.
And
At the end of the
is
year, I gained a bit more clarity, and then I broke up with her and was
Yeah.
like, "Listen, I think this isn't working." And I was pretty honest, and we had a nice conversation. And it was an breakup, and then we became friends a little while later.
But it's really good that you did become friends, like, after that,
Yeah.
because that could easily have gone horribly the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was. I feel extreme like that relationship and the one I had before that. I think I feel really quite regretful about how I handled it. And it's easy for an old man to look back at things that I did when I was younger and feel regretful about. And of course, hindsight is 2020 and all that. But now that I'm older, I realized that it wasn't great. I was kind of I was in a very weak state, and she was into me, and that was enough. And it wasn't until later that it felt, and then I started to feel like it was unbalanced and unfair on her. And so then we broke up. And I don't think it was actually a full year, by the way, that we were together. It was just somewhere in that year, for several months.
I suppose it provided you a safe space to recover with someone who supported you and wanted you. And though there might not have been the love as we understand it now, there was still like a connection between you.
Sometimes it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Because if someone shows an interest in you, it's hard not to be like, oh,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, well, you like me? Well, well, now I like you because you like me, and that makes me feel good. And I think that's probably what happened. She's extremely hot. For the record, like she was, and just it doesn't mean much at all, but again, young man brain. She was goddamn gorgeous, like absolute supermodel, like crazy, way out of my league hot. But just not. I don't know why I didn't have that full connection with her. Even though we got on, we liked the same music, we'd watch all the same movies, we laughed at the same jokes. We had a great time together, and for some reason, I just did not connect with her, even after a few more months of getting to know one another. I guess the original question you had, I mean, that kind of went off, and I know I sound like an asshole about that, and I don't mind if people think I'm an asshole over that.
It was a recovery period, and at the end of the day, we, like, none of us can change our pasts, but we can let the past guide our future. And you're being very honest and open about the fact it's like, this is how things were, this is how I was with them, and you might not necessarily be happy about it or proud about it, but you're honest about it, and it helps
literally
you.
all I have.
Yeah, and well, it helps you guide the future, doesn't it? And learn from those things.
Yeah. The original question was about sex for the first time after sobriety, and from what I remember, it was her, and it was fine. It was just fine. It wasn't anything like incredible. I didn't have any of these like experiences or anything like that. It was just the most normal sex I think I've ever had. And I don't know how to, I don't even like the word normal, but like, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels like it's funny because through what we just said about this relationship I have with this girl, like what the whole thing is really weird and an unorthodox relationship and stuff. But the sexual side of it was just like any average couple, I think. Just every few days we would just make out and then have sex, and it was just normal vanilla. No one was doing anything crazy. I wasn't
Mm.
being sounded or anything. It was just like normal, just random normal positions, average sexual relationship. In which, from what I understand, we were both happy with it. We both came to fucking conclusions, and we just then we got on with our day. I was still smoking weed, and so I did find that while I was high on, I don't often like being drunk
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I'm less in control, and I'm, I like to. I'm having fun if you're having fun, so
Yeah.
I'm doing my best. Is what where my brain's at most of the time when I'm having sex. So I'm really trying. I'm like a little. He's trying his best, I hope it's always been great for all my partners. But yeah, with weed, I found that I could slow myself down. I could take my time. I could really kind of get into it and feel the moment more.
Being there in the moment is really important. Like,
yeah, and I think because for the longest time, it's that same thing. The way I learned or understood the male side of having sex with, a woman in just a cis relationship was guy just fucking pumps away and comes, and that's it. And like, like that's just what it was. And like, having sex with a woman is a different machine from what I understand. Now, I know this is a sex podcast and I'm not the guy, but from what I understand, totally different. And there's a lot, like foreplay is important. It's a build up. There's more to emotional connection is quite often extremely important. And so it's like this, like you're winding up a machine to carefully to a release almost. I don't know how to describe it, but with a guy, you can literally just fuck a sofa hard enough and come, because I feel like
well, this is the thing.
this is
It's
just
actually
reducing everything down to like animal levels, because I'm not really even this way myself, but you can kind of just stroke a dick until it finishes. And I don't think that is the case if
it
you're a
actually
woman.
isn't the case for the vast majority of like people with penises either. And this is the fascinating thing. Like, obviously,
This is where all this shit is so
yeah.
fucked up in my head, man. I don't know any of it.
It's been, well, that's because that's what we're taught. We're taught that you can fuck a sofa and you'll be fine. Do you know what I mean? But
I know now. I'm very different. That was just me kind of reducing it to how I thought then.
Yeah.
Now I know that I'm a different creature and stuff. But
but
yeah, I'm
this is
totally
a lot of
brought
it.
up by this like completely toxic misunderstanding of
But that's
how
what we
to
all get taught, and
enjoy.
we punish ourselves as well for not falling in line with that. And it takes a long time for us to get over that brain space of being like, okay, we are more complicated than just stroke a dick till it comes. Do you know what I mean? It is a more complicated dynamic, and if you take the time to appreciate that, then it's worthwhile. But again, what we're taught is something completely different.
I purely think I stumbled upon maybe being a more conscientious lover just because I was high, on weed, just stoned, because I was just more relaxed. I was just so much more relaxed, and everything I was just able to take my time. There was no rush, I guess. There was no fervent need, because when you're kind of like under the covers with someone and it's hot and you're kissing and you're feeling and you're grabbing and stuff, it's like a rush, like it builds you up, and like that, in that state, if you add into it certain types, if you add cocaine into that, cocaine makes you so aggressive most of the time. It makes you kind of like go attitude. It's like Adderall is cocaine. So you're focused and you have like objective focus. Whereas if you're high, if you just have like a spliff and you're just kind of relaxed, that fervent kind of go attitude is usually reduced, or I found it was for me. And I think in those instances, it was more of it was a different kind of lovemaking. But then also, you don't always want it to be that. Sometimes you just want to fuck and then
Mhm.
finish and then go. And that's both people, and you're both aware of it, and you do that and you go. And sometimes you want to just really, you've got the fucking whole afternoon. You're both feeling it. You're both listening to some fucking nice slow music, and everyone's a little high, and you just kind of feeling around and just fucking about. And it isn't about coming. It's the whole thing is fun.
Yeah.
It's just you're just fooling around, and that, you know, that makes you horny, and you can get hornier and hornier as you go along. But yeah, I think that for me, it wasn't really necessarily that the drugs that I was on enhanced the experience, even though they did in certain cases. I think they just made me perform differently, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it certainly sounds like the drugs didn't. They made sex into a completely different experience as opposed to like a typical sexual experience.
Yeah, and that's why I guess I mentioned the just normal sexual
Yeah.
relationship that me and this girl had. It was just kind of like just if we were in the same bed, sometimes we'd fuck and sometimes we wouldn't, and it was just a casual thing. And then there's a lot of instances. I remember these fervent drug fucks that I had. I injured myself once. I was on so many drugs. This is a really embarrassing story, but
Perfect way to end the podcast.
Yeah, I was seeing a girl, and but it was a very messy, drug fucked up relationship. Where the two of us were sort of seeing each other, and then it was on and off again, and we'd see someone else, and then we'd go back together. One of those.
Yeah.
And she was at my little crack den one night, and I was on just so many drugs. I was completely who knows what. You know, I would have been. It would be terrifying to witness right now. And I was just in a porno in my head is what was happening.
Okay.
I wasn't really. I think I was just trying to calm. I guess it was just I was just fucking a piece of meat. You know, like I don't know, and I have no idea because again, I'm trying
The
to
least romantic way of doing it, but I understand.
absolutely, that's my point. I think is that it was
Yeah.
just I was just a fucking animal. I wasn't really. It wasn't like I was making love, and I
Yeah,
didn't
you
like
were
run
so
a
out of it,
rose
you were
down her
barely
body.
human yourself.
I was
Yeah.
drunk. It was 4 a.m. We just stumbled in, you know, all this shit, and we were fucking. And I know that I was going really hard because I hit my head on the bedboard thing, one of those things that's against the wall. I smacked my head so badly, I split it open. I fell off the bed. I fell into where I had this like stand that had a bunch of bottles on it. The whole thing fell over. I'm naked, covered in vodka because the bottles and beer and shit fell over. An ashtray fell over me. I'm bleeding. I was fully erect and I was just fucked up, dude. And I just was laying in this insane state, and the door opened and like 4 of my friends were there because they thought something fucking crazy had happened. Like they didn't know what was going on. And I'm just laying on the floor, completely fucking fucked up. And there's just this girl in the bed, like, what the fuck? And it like it's one of those things that keeps me up at night a little bit because it's a funny story now. But in that moment, I was so proud as well. Like as a kid, as a young man, I was very proud, and I didn't want anyone.
Yeah.
I was strong and, you know, cool, kind of. And it was just fucking so embarrassing, so incredibly embarrassing. It pierced through the drugs, the alcohol, everything. I remember the point where I was laying on the ground clearly. And the rest, I think, is just, you know, this fucking part was just weird. It's kind of in my memory, but my friends just fucking opening the door, concern look, turning into pissing themselves laughing, back into concern when they see blood coming down my face.
Yeah.
The girl's face was just like, you know, when girls get the ick meme.
Yeah.
It was like one of those, and I was like, this is the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me. It was just so horribly embarrassing, and I hate it, and it keeps me up sometimes when I think about it. But probably drugs was the reason.
I mean, it certainly sounds like quite literally a cocktail of disaster, if I'm completely honest.
It was horrific. And so weirdly enough now, I am aware of that. Sometimes when I'm having sex now, I'm like, don't hit your head against the wall. And it comes up like a trauma reminder. And I'm like, dude, just stay in the moment here. Can we not worry about this random thing that happened fucking years ago? Say with and he's like, yeah, but you might hit your head against the wall and really embarrass yourself and fall out of the bed. And it'd be really embarrassing. And where's your erection gone? And I'm like, hey, guy, come on, dude. And, like that kind of.
I mean, that is definitely... That's also a very common thing, is the mind going to a certain place and then just killing the mood, whether it means to or not. It's just
my brain is very will get sometimes very distracted when I'm having sex, because I'm just I'm in performance mode. Like I'm trying too hard to make sure that they're having fun and they're enjoying it and that they're into it, that I stop having fun. And that's probably a whole other podcast. But I can get in my own head like that.
Dig deep into that one some other time for sure.
Yeah, because that's one where I think that's interesting, because I know that if I'm drunk or if I'm on drugs, I never have those thoughts.
Well, that's where that whole Dutch courage idea comes in. But again, that is something we can definitely talk about.
Whole other podcast.
Another podcast. We'll drag you back on. That sounds like a great idea. But thank you so much for joining me. I realize we've overrun and we already started with technical issues and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you my whole life story. I don't know what you wanted from this.
I just wanted to talk. You're the only person I know that is very open about their previous history with drugs and like the scenario there. And I was like, do you know what? I'd love to be able to get a genuine perspective on sex, relationships, and drugs dynamic therein. You were the first person that sprang to mind as somebody that would be confident enough to do that and be honest with.
It's a new thing. It is a new I now find that if I don't have conversations with people and if we just met and you were like, oh yeah, have you ever had drugs or whatever? If I was to go, no, I feel like I'm lying now. And I don't like that. I don't like living with that feeling. So I became extremely open. I started just sharing stuff on my stream, and I just started telling everyone everything. I don't really have any secrets, apart from obviously things that people wouldn't want to know, or things between friends. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Valen Vain, yeah, it's crazy. Got 3-headed penis. It's insane.
I do. It's true. It's coiled like a corkscrew.
So I got really open with speaking, and so I'm very happy to talk about this stuff. It isn't comfortable for me, by the way. It does make me feel very uncomfortable, and it isn't something like, I think a lot of people glorify some of these kinds of stories and stuff, and I can laugh and joke about them in a casual way, but it was absolutely horrifically traumatic, the entire thing. But I'm very open with it, because for one thing, it makes me feel better, like I can breathe, like I'm not just constantly holding all of this in anymore. And also sometimes I imagine like a little version of me maybe watching the stream. Like if I could go back in time and just be like, hey guy, check, by the way, this and this is what's going on in your brain, this is why, and if you cope with it with this is why that's doing that. It would probably save me a decade of like figuring it out in my own head. If I just didn't have any guides when I was younger. So I love podcasts like this, like yours. I love people that educate stuff, because literally the point we made, I didn't have anyone like that. I didn't have anyone in my corner. I didn't have anyone that I felt like I could trust, and there was just no resources. And because of that, I almost completely decimated my life for a good portion of it. I've always felt like I've been trying to catch up with my own life, because it just felt so stunted because of that stuff. That wasn't me. That wasn't who I wanted to be. That wasn't the life I wanted to live. I didn't have a choice. And if I had access to information, or maybe I'd watched a stream like this, it might have helped, So I think it's important.
Well,
I'm always happy to.
No, I really appreciate it. And for people that are listening or watching on the vodcast on YouTube or what have you, I'll actually put a whole load of links down below for help that you can get in and around wherever I can offer it. There's a whole load of different places that you can get stuff, loads of different charities, loads of different resources and stuff. And I know that my community here on Twitch often have resources available if somebody's asking about stuff. So thanks to my community for providing that for other people. And I will stick a whole load in the description. But again, thank you very much, Brad, for joining me. I know that you absolutely hate shouting yourself out, so I won't make you feel even more awkward after I've dragged it out of you for the past hour and 20 minutes. But people, go check out BradWOTO on twitch.tv/BradWOTO and your BuffWOTO on Twitter. In fact, you know what? But you can find him on Twitch and Twitter, and I will put his link tree or what have you in the descriptions as well.